monkeys, apes, gorillas, orangutans, bonobos. Primates have been part of human culture since the very beginning. We've always had them right next to us as humanity grows, and they're our more hairy, dumber, but much stronger cousin. But why do we love them so much? Fascinated by the smallest things that they do, taking a bath, wearing a suit, stealing phones from tourists, they're like our little buddies. Yet we have an equally great sense of fear of them. Rightly so. Apes are known to target people's hands, face, and privates if they want to hurt us, and a gorilla is 600 pounds of pure muscle and given the chance could rip you apart. Joe Martin, a famous orangutan actor from the 1920s that is credited to be in at least 50 silent era films, is another example of how humans love monkeys but often forget that they are wild animals. Joe Martin's career and tragic end can make its own video, and so I encourage you to do your own research in greater detail. This fascination with primates as a whole has not died down with the turn of the century. If anything, we love monkeys even more now. There's this kindred spirit that we have with them, and as society and technology take us further from nature in our daily lives, the monkey has become a symbol of simpler life. The carefreeness of eating bananas, swinging on a vine through the jungle, and throwing poop at people fills us with a nostalgia for something we never had. Of course, this is a fantasy. Groups of apes and gorillas are known to be extremely violent, oftentimes killing sick or old members of the group just for fun while laughing, living in brutal hierarchies of domination and submission. So it's no surprise that we tell stories of these great creatures. They're the perfect metaphor for humanity's darker side, smart enough to know, but wild enough not to care, but also of humanity's curiosity and innocence. And that's why I wanted to talk about these three films, because they either have monkeys in them, use them as a metaphor, or both. While these three movies don't have much in common when it comes to style, genre, or setting, they do have a little bit in common when it comes to themes. Before I touch on that though, let's jump into the first film. Monkey Man, sadly, is not about a man who got bit by a radioactive monkey, gaining the power of a monkey, and now fighting crime in the middle of a major city in spandex. A real waste of an opportunity if you ask me. We don't have enough of those films. No, it's a young man living in Mumbai, India, fighting underground to earn a miserable existence. It's a mixture of a John Wick action film, a revenge thriller, and a heist story. One of the best parts of it is the setting itself. We've seen so many American action films through the streets of New York and Los Angeles, but never in the small alleys and vibrant markets of Mumbai. Dave Patel, who is fantastic in everything that he does, not only stars in this movie, but he wrote, produced, and directed it. He must have been fantastic to have during school group projects. The filming of this was also no joke. Dave Patel not only broke his hand and some of his toes, someone actually died on set from a heart attack. Obviously not his fault, but still insane to think about. And to top that all off, this was shot during the times where there was still a lot of COVID restrictions, so they couldn't even shoot in India itself, even though it takes place in India. Originally, this was supposed to be dumped onto some kind of streaming service and die immediately, but Jordan Peele saw it and he liked it so much that he bought it and got a nice deal to be distributed through theaters, which I think was for the best, because if this hadn't come out in theaters, I don't think I would have watched it. And a lot of the scenes, especially the action, are essential to see on a big screen. Heavily borrowing from the John Wick films in all the best ways while still having some creative kills and unique cinematography, I think the blood, sweat, and tears of this movie can be felt right through the camera work, and that's mainly because some of it is real. Other parts really lean into that heist energy with very quick shots and even faster editing. There are so many scenes with just amazing rising tension and excitement, with more ferocity than an elderly person trying to get into a store that's already closed. Sorry, Grandma, your lottery tickets are gonna have to wait until tomorrow. Many of you are wondering, besides the title of the movie, what does this have to do with monkeys? I'm getting to that. Be patient. Dave Patel's character, Kid, wears a gorilla mask when he fights, which he most likely got the idea from the Hindu deity of Hanuman that his mother always told him about. A monkey-like god who confused the sun for a ripe piece of fruit. For this, the king of the gods, Indra, punished him by disfiguring him. He also is known for ripping open a chest wound that was slowly killing him to show his devotion. For this, he was granted immortality. This is the main metaphor of Monkey Man. Patel's character is supposed to be a combination of pure violent strength, childhood hopefulness, and ignorance, aptly named Kid, while still having the will will and devotion to lay one's life down for what you believe in. We see this with how many hits he takes in the fighting ring and he still gets back up, how people look down on him because of his strange hands, how he never lets his setbacks define him as a person, how he never forgets the gifts his mother gave him and the peace he had with her back in the day. I think the monkey metaphor leans to how humanity is evil, disgusting, and often hurts the innocent the most, while we still have the choice to do good and the calling to make a change. The other side of the movie I failed to mention is its commentary on poverty, classism, religion, and the politics of India. Being an American who can barely stand his own country's politics, I am woefully uneducated on the state of India, but that's not why I didn't mention it earlier. This movie, I feel, really struggles to do one thing consistently, and as the movie progresses, it really becomes emotionally and physically draining to watch. The action scenes, like I mentioned earlier, are amazing, but they're really far apart from each other. All the heist stuff, while it is very exciting, it ultimately doesn't really lead to anything. There's no really thematic conclusion to this side of the movie, even though it takes up about a third of it. Lastly, the movie hints at the poverty that is just rampant in the streets, religious and political corruption that is just slowly rotting the country from the inside. This too, much like the heist stuff, never really gets resolved. While these things are touched upon, they never really give a conclusion to what is to be done about the corruption, what is to be done about the poverty in the country. The last scene is the most telling of this problem. While the imagery here is just dripping and the performances are just perfect, the ending is very basic and it leaves me hoping and hanging for more while I know I'm not going to get it. The movie tries to be three different things and I think it fails to properly do any one of them, which is really sad because I genuinely really wanted to like this movie a lot, but these major issues are just something I just can't ignore. Something happens about 2/3 into this movie that I feel like completely destroyed the pacing of the movie that was so fast and so quick. And the worst part about this is it's supposed to be like this emotional, character-driven section, but it's something that we've seen a dozen times before in other films, and I just feel like it completely destroys the fast-paced heist and action part that was established in the first 2/3. This part alone makes me want to avoid a rewatch, and if I did rewatch it, I think I would probably just skip this 25 minutes for the reasons I mentioned just before this. I will say I'm excited to see what Dev Patel works on next. If he's acting in another movie or directing another movie, I'm excited to see what he's going to do. Not everyone makes a perfect film on their first go. Most people never make a movie. I've never made a movie, so props for him to be able to actually complete his project. I hope the next one is not as brutal as this one. I hope he doesn't break any bones. I hope no one dies, and I'm excited to see what he does next. Now that we're done talking about stupid politics and the poor, it's time to get to the real art. Godzilla x Kong. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that there's a great meaning to Kong as a giant gorilla, at least not for too long. Please bear with me. I think the reason why we like movies about big monsters destroying our lives and cities is that we all secretly wish for something bigger and grander than our lives. I've heard people say that they were born too late to explore the world and too early to travel the stars. While I think that statement is mostly ridiculous, it does point out to how mundane our lives have become. I remember when I was in middle school or even earlier, we used to have the dumbest conversations about the most randomest things for hours, with only the knowledge that we had or whatever our parents told us and our own wits. I love being able to just sit and talk our way through things, think about our points and arguments, and never really come away with a complete answer. It may sound stupid, but having to defend yourself and what you believe or what you think with just your own mind is a lot of fun, even if it's not what it feels like at the moment. Now Google just generates an answer and ruins the whole thing. We might know more stuff, but we understand a lot less about the world and ourselves. And I feel like these movies are a very blunt way of trying to capture that childlike feeling again. Seeing these giant monsters just run through a city like it's nothing gives us this feeling of unknown power, that there's still magic in the world. That feeling you had as a kid when you were smashing two action figures together and you were making explosion noises with your mouth to make the immersion of this epic battle even grander in your mind. Kong is greatly featured in this one compared to Godzilla, and especially because we're now in his world, that makes him look very tiny. Someone that we usually look at with great excitement just because of his mere size is now reduced to something small, something more mundane, something more like us. Of course, this is completely ruined by some of the worst human characters I've seen in any of these monster movies that I can recall from recent years, and all these ideas are basically abandoned after the first scene. I legit could not stand these humans, especially these two guys. Anytime they came on screen, I actively had this just anger towards them. I was hoping they would die at some point in the movie, at least one of them, you know, like I would be satisfied with at least one of them dying. I still don't know why they're in the movie. I know why they're in the movie, because they have to drop off a thing, so we end up spending an hour with characters I just hate. We spend a lot of time with Kong just kind of being by himself in his world, you know, with Mini Kong. If you've seen the trailer, he's in this too, and some of the best moments in the movie are just him and this little monkey interacting with each other, and these human characters just do not need to be here. The only one that I could see being essential is the deaf girl. The removal of basically all the male human characters would have been fine, and just had like the mother-daughter duo, and we would have gotten a lot more characterization for them, and it would have been a perfect parallel for King Kong and Mini Kong, and the movie would have been like 30 minutes shorter. We would have gotten to the action, this idea of finding your people and finding your place. Is it by blood, or is it by the love that you find in your life? I feel like that would have hit way harder. The magic people in the movie, later on in the movie, they could have just replaced whatever these guys were doing, you know. But you're probably wondering, are there some good action scenes at the end or throughout the movie? And while I will say yes, there are some great monster on monster violence in this movie, but it's very sporadic, and I do not think the last scene of the movie, the last action scene, is worth waiting an hour and a half for. It might be an hour and 40, because these characters are just frustrating, and I feel like it's just easier to watch the monster clips online. You just skip an hour and 30 in, like it's just not necessary. And if I'm being honest, the reason why I'm probably being so harsh with this movie is because Godzilla Minus One was just so fantastic all around, you know, special effects, acting, storytelling with Godzilla and the characters outside of it, that I think it really spoiled audiences with, you know, monster films. Unlike with Monkey Man, I do not feel bad with ending this section on a bad note. Godzilla x Kong New Sequel is not a great movie. Now this is the good stuff finally. Unlike most people, I really enjoy the Planet of the Apes movies. The new ones, the old ones, just not this one. Granted, it's been a while since I've seen the old ones, so I might be remembering them better than they actually are. Like, the second one has a cult of bald people worshipping a nuclear bomb. These guys really creeped me out as a kid. But regardless of how strange the old ones are, I can say confidently that the modern day Caesar trilogy was fantastic. Great performances, one of the very few times where special effects are better than practical, and great storytelling that doesn't just become a cheesy metaphor for one very obvious thing like environmentalism, racism, or human greed. The best part about these movies is it doesn't make all the apes good guys, and it doesn't make all the humans bad guys. It really does a good job of diversifying the motivations of these characters. Like, obviously this guy is the bad guy, but it's not obvious how he got here. Caesar is a perfect example of this. He's a different ape throughout each one of the movies, and I think the arcs flow very perfectly throughout the films, and he learns something critical to his character every single time. We do get new humans in each movie, and while that is a little bit frustrating not to see like a continuation throughout, I do feel that these humans give us a very different side of the human perspective in this world each time. And while the metaphors I mentioned above are in these films, that's not the meat of the storytelling. The main ideas that this movie is trying to communicate to us is exactly that: language and communication. How we talk to ourselves and also how we talk with others really determines how the world around us is created and how we live in it. One word in Rise has more impact on the story than some franchises altogether.
No! Oh, chills. Literal chills.
And to dabble a little bit into the real world, language is one of the very few things that actually separates us from animals. Language is what also lets humans create culture, which is not something that apes are able to continue to have throughout the generations. One monkey or ape might be able to discover something or do something, but it doesn't get passed on throughout the years. Humans are not just able to share strong emotions and ideas in the here and now, but into the far future. That's why you or me are able to pick up Plato's Republic and hear the thoughts of a man that lived 2,000 years ago, or check out what was happening in China in 500 AD, but also feel and experience the first-hand effects of war from soldiers in World War I or World War II. You can read and experience all these moments without ever having to leave the comfort of your home. This level of expression is at the heart of these films. While the original trilogy does focus on a lot of more face-to-face communication, direct relationships between characters, between family members, between each one of the tribes, I think this this new trilogy, if it is a trilogy, we'll focus on a lot more of this more wider aspect of communication. I might talk about a few things that many would consider spoilers, so if you would like to click away from this video, this would be the time to do it now. My opinions of this movie, I'll mention it again at the end, is I enjoyed it. I didn't love it as much as the original trilogy, but I'm still excited to see what's going to happen in these movies. In Kingdom, we see Noah, our main character, interact with an orangutan that talks about Caesar like a spiritual guru. Caesar has now left the realm of reality and entered into the world of myth. And this orangutan is the first sign we get a philosophy or religion among the apes. The villain of this story, Proximus, gets one of the humans to read him history, and most likely got the idea of gathering groups of apes to do large labor projects from a Roman history book. One thing that I love about this movie is that the apes don't automatically progress technology-wise. Oftentimes, we think that discovery moves in a straight line with obvious steps, but if you read history, you'll find many examples of how societies chose not to progress, or specifically went back to an older way of living. In the movie, we see the apes have forgotten how to read and write, but they have built a symbiotic relationship to the birds of prey. They also didn't learn how to build with metal, but adapted their building style with previous metal structures. These might not be huge details or mind-blowing revelations, but this movie takes its time at the beginning and really fleshes out the world and actually makes it feel lived in, and rewards people for paying attention. Overall, I was shocked to find out that the secret villain of this movie was Nova, the human girl. Many of us, me included, have this bias that humans are better somehow, and that's because we're human, so we project ourselves onto them. But she really does commit some of the worst acts in this movie. She murders humans, murders apes, all in the sense of some greater good. Her character would definitely make a second viewing more interesting because of all her secret motivations that she hides throughout the movie. Going back to Noah, I think one of the things that signifies the difference between him and Caesar is his name. Caesar, being named after a Roman dictator, has the temper of a warrior and the spirit of a ruler. He shows us how violence is important to overthrow tyrannical governments, especially in the first movie, Rise, but also shows the pitfalls of violence in the following films. Caesar has to let go of his bloodlust and his need for revenge so that he can actually save his people and save his family and leave a better example for them in the future. Noah, I feel like, is most likely a descendant of Caesar, if not by blood, but at least by culture. So what's the point of Noah, and how does he differ from Caesar? Well, like I said, his name is very significant to that. He's named after the biblical figure of Noah. If you don't believe me on that, he literally saves his family from a flood in this movie at the end of it, and he's a lot more of a spiritual character. He's not as violent as Caesar. He gets his butt whooped multiple times in this movie, and he's not good at fighting. Noah is better characterized as someone who is clever and caring. While he is brave and not afraid to put himself into danger, he often gets himself out of situations by using his wits. Near the end of the movie, we see a gorilla chasing Noah, and it's definitely a clear fight that he would lose. He would stand no chance of standing up to him in a physical fight. So instead, Noah leads him into a trap where his physical size is used to his disadvantage, and Noah is able to escape while the gorilla gets stuck. He also defeats Proximus by calling on his tribe and the eagles to knock him off a cliff. It's a much more thematic resolution than just punching him really hard, because it shows, especially by the eagles, that he has a noble and elevated morality. We see at the beginning of the movie Noah and his friends traveling to a very high elevated place to receive eagle eggs so they can bond with one of them. There's not enough for all three of them, so Noah gives the other two to his friends, forcing Noah to go to an even higher place to receive his own, hinting at the fact that Noah is called to something higher. He has a higher calling, a higher destiny in this life. And this comes to fruition at the end because his tribe helps him willingly. Proximus, on the other hand, rules with fear and submission. He's also painted as a very ignorant ape at the beginning of the movie, and spends the first third of the movie learning the harshness of this life and trying to gain as much wisdom from this world from other characters, mainly from Raka, his father, Proximus, and most of all, Nova. The next two movies, if I had to guess, would be about Noah's transformation into a spiritual leader for his people, most likely some kind of Christ-like figure. And the ultimate goal for these next two movies will be for Noah to answer Caesar's final question, whether humans and apes are actually able to coexist with each other. This movie's happy ending leads me to guess that many of Noah's friends and family will not survive the next two movies, most likely sacrificed for the hope of a cohabitation between the two species. Unlike unlike Caesar, I believe Noble will survive his trials and lead humanity and apes into a bright future of cohabitation, finally fulfilling Caesar's last dream. While I didn't enjoy this movie as much as I enjoyed the original trilogy, in a similar way that I enjoy Dune Part 1 more now that Part 2 has come out, I think it's a little bit similar to that. Not as good as those movies, but same concept. And that's all from me today. Let me know what you think about these movies in the comments. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, tell me your favorite kind of monkey, which one of these movies is your favorite as well. And if you really enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing. And if you really love what I do here, you can even buy me a coffee. Really appreciate it. Hope to see you soon. Godspeed.